sun this last week. I like going really brown, and I'm very tired because normally my husband, am I on? Did he hear? No. Oh dear. Just when I thought. Okay, all right. So I'll start again. I love the sun, as most of you know. My husband normally goes darker than me, but I'm proud to say I'm actually one shade darker than him. He can sit under a palm tree and walk out really dark, and I have to work really hard. But I must say, the sun has really been good this week. I really love the heat and to swim. And we have to top up the pool at the moment every day because we have a leak. But I ensure that every day I can swim and enjoy God's good creation. I want you maybe to reminisce with me a little bit. When I grew up, you can hear from my accent, in South Africa, I had an aunt that lived in Switzerland, and I used to love writing her letters. And my mom, being the Scrooge she was, she would go and buy the thinnest type of writing paper you had ever found. The onion leaf paper. I don't know if anybody remembers the onion leaf writing paper, but it's the thinnest paper you can ever find, and basically you can write many letters, pop it in an envelope, and the cost of the postage is really cheap. But I must say, I used to love writing to my aunt, and if you only had a few notes to say to somebody, you put it in an address, already paid envelope that you would get. That means you didn't have to go to the post office twice. You would just go to the post office once and send your letter. But I really loved writing to my aunt because Switzerland was a faraway place from South Africa. There was snow and it was beautiful, and just the thought of traveling there one day would just really, that's all I wanted to do, was to travel and see her in Switzerland. And you know, we would write, it would take about a month from Johannesburg to Zurich for the letter to get there, and about a month traveling back. So we had to wait a while for letters to be answered and came back to us. And I used to love getting a letter from my aunt because she used to put like a pressed flower, a Swiss pressed flower in the letter, and I used to love it, and I collected them and put them in my Bible. But when we couldn't really send a long letter, the good old, I don't know if anybody remembers, the good old telegram. Yeah, who got them at the wedding? I got them at our wedding. We loved it. We couldn't wait for our wedding to come, and telegrams would be read out, and we were made really special because somebody had sent us a little telegram, and that was about the shortest way we could send a message. Trunk calls in those days, you had to book a call from Johannesburg to Zurich, and the operator would phone you and say, your call's ready, you can phone. And we had the telephones that you had to do your finger, the finger, and then we advanced to the press button, and then we got the big mobiles that were as big as a brick. And I remember my husband Jared still got Andres' phone, where it's like a mobile Nokia, and you've got the screen, the numbers, and you flip it open, and in there you can type your message. I actually still want that one to work because it's really good. How technology is advanced. But then after school, I left school and I went and trained as a personal assistant, and I learned how to use a typewriter. I don't know, that was I wasn't taught on a computer when I went to secretarial school. We had a typewriter and mine jumped around. Like I had to follow my typewriter along the desk, and while we did speed tests, we had to type, and I would follow, and then I would follow the typewriter back, and my friend and I would hit each other with the typewriters. Because we had never typed on a typewriter, we were in the first class in secretarial school, because I went to an academic school, and type lessons were not academic. So I had to start from the bottom. So I learned how to type, and when I got a job as a personal assistant, we had to put 3 pieces of paper in the typewriter with the carbon paper in between, your triplicate. And if you made a mistake, you had a special whiteout for typewriters, and you put it in and you fixed up your mistake, and you got your boss to sign the letter, hoping he has not seen that whiteout on the letter. Then you would then go ahead, and once he had signed it, he had put then you put your thing in the internal envelope. I don't know if anyone remembers the internal envelope system. Yep. You had your in tray and your out tray. and the post person in the office would come and pick up your internal envelope out your out tray, and then when you got the signed copies, you came back in again. And that's how I learned how to be a personal assistant all those years ago. But today, what? We send a message and an email with a little bit of a finger, just a touch of your finger, just a quick message. And you wonder if a little bit of the writing and the personal touch has been lost. And a while ago in Melbourne, I can't remember years ago, because I seem to speak to lots of people because I like to talk. I was at a seminar and I spoke to an older lady, and we were just talking about communication. And she said to me, she was a British lady, and I asked her about her family, and she said, I've got a sister in England. And I said, how often do you talk to her? She said, no, we don't talk. We just write letters. I said, how often? Every day, she said. I said, what? So she said, yep, every night. I mean, she's talking about, she was in her 80s when I spoke to her. She probably is with the Lord right now. But she's talking about in the 1940s and 1950s. She was one of the British people that came out on the boats. Some of them call themselves the 10-pound pom. Andrew's hairdresser used to call himself the 10-pound pom. They came over. So trunk calls were very expensive. You came on a ship that took too long to travel, and or else you paid an exorbitant amount for an aeroplane ticket. So her and her sister made a pact that every night they would sit down and write each other a letter. They would write whatever happened in their day, their feelings, their thoughts, because the next day they would go to their post box Monday to Friday, and in there would be a letter. They would feel that connection of each other, that even though there was a vast amount of distance between England and between Australia, they had that connection. So if they had to one day meet each other, that meeting would be, they would know exactly what happened in their lives that day. And, I'm the guilty person. I love Facebook. It keeps me, and I'm old-fashioned according to my children, because I don't do Instagram, I don't do Snapchat, I don't do Twitter, I don't know any other new ones. I do Facebook because it keeps me in touch with the other people, my age group, across the world. And how often on Facebook you get that message that says, it's somebody's birthday today. You think, okay, quickly, get on Google, type in happy birthday images. You scroll, you find the one that you love. Those are the floppy disks that I grew up I don't remember those floppy disks. Yeah, that's how I started. The first floppy disk was the size of an X-ray. So I progressed quite well. So there we go. So you find your happy birthday image. I even know how to put it onto Facebook. I've learned how to put it onto Facebook, and you type in, Dear Lassia, hope you have a great day. You're so proud of yourself that first of all, you remember their birthday, and second, you've made that connection. And you put it on Facebook. And then I often have to edit, because I realized I've made typing mistakes in my quickness, edit, and I send it out again. In a way, what I should have done was built a birthday card a week earlier and sat down and written some words of affirmation to that person, not just posted up a quick thing on Facebook. And when I was working as a young lady at 21 years old, I was a nanny to 4 very, very adventurous girls, the ages of 7, 5, 3, and 1. And growing up in a very strict South African home, where you're seen and not heard, you weren't allowed to have your own opinions. These 4 Swiss girls had they had opinions even at the age of 1. And it was like I arrived into their house and it was just mayhem, it was just craziness, and children have their own opinions, really? Okay. And by Christmas time I had settled in and I'd realized children are allowed opinions, and I really enjoyed it. And I walked down one morning and Usi, who was a medical doctor, she was writing furiously letters, and I said to her in Swiss German, what you doing? And she replied back, well, I'm writing my children letters. I said, but they can barely read. Now, what's the point being 21 and ignorant to being a parent? And she said, every year I write my girls a letter. And when they're old enough, they can read them. So when I became a mother, I started that same tradition, which I still carry on to this day. I've included my husband in the number. But every year on Christmas Day, I will deliver my children in the form of a card or a letter about my love for them, their affirmation, how I've seen them grow in a year, and all the achievements that they have achieved, whether it's emotionally or funny or whatever, and I deliver it because I've taken the time to communicate and write a letter to people that I love. And I do love writing letters. I write letters to the people that are belonging to the ministry that I look after. Each letter I write, I love it because it's just a form of connection with that person, just making them feel really, really important. And this past year, my journey from 2018, I got really very excited because a university sent me a message saying, Melisa, have you thought of doing the chaplaincy course? And saying to the Lord, I've been wanting to do the chaplaincy course forever and a day. Yes, I signed up. But I didn't realize there's lots of reflection and critical reflection that has to take place during that time. And one of the things was I had to critically reflect myself and my journey as doing my placement at Bapcare, and my supervisor and my placement manager had to read and sign it off. So I thought, oh my word, this is going to be really tricky because I don't want to open up for strangers to read my thoughts and my reflection. I don't want other people to know what's inside of me. But I had to do it. I waited till the 24th hour, and I did it, and I reflected, and I journaled, and my placement manager read it, and my supervisor read it, and they signed off, and they said, how did you feel about it? I said, well, in the beginning I was really anxious because I didn't want to open up. I am an emotional person by nature, but I don't always want people to know what's really, really inside of me, because traditionally, in a South African home, you don't do that. That's a sign of weakness. You don't tell people your inner side, anything inside at all, because it's a sign of weakness. And even though I share a lot of stuff with my husband, inside of me, there were things that I didn't want to share with anybody, but I knew I had to do that. And I did it. And I walked out feeling the placement manager, a lovely Mauritian man, and my supervisor, both lovely Christians, really saw what the struggle that I had and affirmed me that it really was the right thing. And I really, after it, I felt a great wave, or like a burden, lifted off me, because at long last, at my age of 52, I gave everything to God, 100%. And I thought to myself, you know, but who in the Bible did that, you know? You know, why must I do it? If somebody in the Bible did that deep reflection, okay, I'll do it. And then I went to the Bible, and lo and behold, the Lord said to me, David. And I thought, oh, there's too many Psalms to read. I started reading all of the Psalms, and I realized how much David really poured his heart out to God. Whether he was angry, whether he was upset, whether he was happy, he actually was very honest with God. He even asked God in one of the Psalms, why have you forsaken me? And that corresponds to Jesus on the cross. Why have you forsaken me? He got to that point, and he said to God in some of the Psalms, where are you? I don't know where you are. I can't feel you. You're not around. And then in other Psalms, he rejoices with God. He thanks God. But that happens to us today, don't we? I feel alone sometimes. Sometimes I say, just want to resign and walk away, you know, because, you know, you're tired, you know, you don't want to do stuff, you know, I want to walk away. Lord, where are you? You know, my dad died when I was 20, so he never has met my children. He's never met my husband. He's never walked me down the aisle. You know, but God has a plan. My dad's life was, my dad didn't know God, and then when he did find God, he was an amazing man for God, but he suffered with his health. So God had a plan. God comes and sits next to you and says, yes, you are disappointed, but have faith and look forward to what I've got in store for you. I never dreamed to come here to be a minister in this church. I never thought about even Templestowe Baptist. But when I've come, I've enjoyed my job. I love my job. I don't ever want to leave. You'll have to kick me out one day, when I'm, in the wheelchair. But, going back to the Bible and back to David. David was the 8th son of Jesse. He was a great-grandson, or the grandson of Ruth. So David had lineage. But he was the youngest little boy. And God says to Samuel, I want you to go to the house of Jesse, and I want you to anoint one of Jesse's sons. And Samuel says to God in 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 16, God instructs him, but Samuel's petrified. He says, I don't want to do it. I don't want to go to Jesse's house because Saul's going to find out and I'm going to lose my life. I don't want to do it. And God says, you go and you anoint one of the sons in Jesse's household. So Samuel goes and God says, take a heifer with you and you go with the cow and things will look good on the trail. So Samuel goes to Jesse, and Samuel, now this is my imagination, knocks on the door and Jesse opens up and there's 7 strapping big bodybuilder. Where's Mark? Is Mark around? Yeah, Mark, just stand up. He's broad like Mark or like Robert, or like maybe even Matt and James and Andres, you're too old, or James, That's my husband, so I can freely converse. Okay, Jason. But God says to Samuel, why are you looking at their physique? And God prompts Samuel, ask Jesse who else there is in your home. And Samuel says to Jesse, do you have another son? Yes, I have a little one that's sitting outside as a shepherd. Go call him. So in walks David, tiny and scrawny, which I can relate because I'm 50 centimeters and maybe a couple more with the heels. So I can relate to David because I'm small, I'm not really, I'm a tiny woman. I can't walk the catwalks as a model, Some things in life can't do. I can't reach the top of the shelf in the supermarket. I have to climb up, And in walks David, the scrawny little son of Jesse, who has the lowest job in the home, tendering the sheep. And God says to Samuel, I want you to anoint him. And Samuel probably does like a backflip, I can't really do, you've got to be joking kind of thing. And God says to Samuel again, I don't look at a person's outward appearance. I look at what's inside. And my husband said he was attracted to shorter women. So I'm really happy about that. But, if I had to say what attracted me to my husband wouldn't be because he's 6 foot tall or he's got broad shoulders. The whole of him attracted me. More what had he inside than outside. And God doesn't look, he created us. We are in his image. But God said, I'm not interested what you look like or what you wear. I want to see what's inside of you. And David was then anointed. He still goes on tendering to be sheep. And we know the story a bit about David. He goes to his brothers. He fights a massive giant, Goliath. I think it was about 9 foot tall, round about there. And he goes on to learn to be a leader. He goes on to be king. And he goes on to fight wars. And Israel flourishes. David even gets the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. And that's why Jerusalem is also called the city of David. So David he's a great leader. He does everything well. But personally, David doesn't always do so well, does he? Those that know, he made some really bad judgment calls personally, and his household wasn't run so well once he made mistakes. And the book of Psalms, I'm not quite sure if I got the pronunciation, and the book of Psalms, the Hebrew title is Tehillim, which means praises. For there's no psalm that does not contain an element of praise. So every psalm in the book of Psalms, 150, there's an element of praise in every psalm. So even when David pours out his heart, he's angry with God, he's disappointed with God, he can't feel God, in there is still an element of praise. Psalm 96 is one of my favorite psalms. And when I have to research a lot with my studies, so on Google again becomes my best friend, and some books, I found out that Psalm 96, or the Psalms, are broken up into 3 areas. So each psalm will have an element of God and his rule, honor, honesty, and sincerity, and worship. So each psalm has that. So let me go to the next one. So Psalm 96, the worship element is sing to the Lord a new song, sing to the Lord all the earth, sing to the Lord, praise his name, and proclaim his salvation day after day. Declare his glory among the nations and his marvelous deeds among all people. If I want to go back. So in our lives, is God ruling our life? Is he the ruler of our lives? Do we honor him with honesty and sincerity? And do we worship him with our lives in all that we do? Honor and honesty is from verses 4 to 6. And God and his rule. Now we know God's coming to rule the earth. We know he's coming. But in those 3 areas, where do we place our lives? And David was known of a man after God's own heart. Can we rightfully say that we are a woman or a man after God's own heart? Is God the ruler of our lives right now? Do we worship him with everything that we do? You know, I reflected back. Andres and I, we were speaking yesterday or the day before, I can't remember, and we were just saying, you know, we were marveling that we've been married for almost 27 years. We were talking about the telegram and getting a telegram for our weddings, and I said, oh, where's those telegrams? They're in those old-fashioned albums still with the sticky contact paper that are all brown by now. And we were reflecting on the journey we've had in our lives. We haven't had the smoothest journey. Some people get married happy. Andres' mind looked like this, you know. But in all of the ups and the downs, like a zigzag, God's never left us. God's never taken himself away from us. God's been with Andres and I each time on the side, because when we look at the outcome of that problem, it's a miraculous thing. How we got to Australia, how God looked after us. If things had gone rotten and God wasn't there, we wouldn't be here. Or we wouldn't have what we have right now. But so the Lord wants us to worship him, adore him. He wants us to be the ruler of our lives. And you know those surveys we get? No? You go shopping at Coles and Safeway, and within 2 seconds of getting home, you've got a survey waiting for you on your phone. I don't know, Coles Liquorland thinks I shop there all the time, because all I get is surveys from Coles Liquorland. I've just been shopping. I've never been into Coles Liquorland, but they send me a survey. And in the survey, they will ask you, or in anything that you've done, a survey will ask you, you know, how do you rank our service? Or in a hotel, was the bedroom big enough? Were there fleas in the bed? Was the bath clean? Did you get parking? Was the aircon working? How were the staff towards you? Were the eggs good for breakfast? On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate our service? And you get, it takes about 5 or 10 minutes for you to finish a long survey. And they ask you from, you know, if you did something on a scale of 1 being awful, and number 10, the eggs were cooked to your perfection, which doesn't often happen with me. I love hot with poached eggs, but they've got to be runny, so it makes it very difficult for the person serving you to give you extra hot, runny, poached eggs. So I never give them 10 for that. But if somebody had to write, or I had to ask you right now, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being absolutely nothing and 10 absolutely glorious, where would your relationship with God fit? What number would you choose right now? If I had to ask, if you got a survey in the mail, where would that number be? And sometimes the number might be very low, or the number might be very high. But if you look at it and you think, why did I choose that number? Why did I choose that particular number? Why is my life not right with God? Or, yes, thank you, Lord, my life is great with you. And I know some people aren't into the letter writing exercises or anything like that. But writing a letter to God, like David wrote the Psalms to God, well, he didn't write all the Psalms, he was just one of the authors. But if you had to write a letter to God, how would you start that letter? Would you start that letter with, let me go back, with worship, and then put honor and sincerity in it, and end the letter with God ruling your life? Or would you start the letter with, God, I can't stand it, my life's very hard, I don't want this happening? But we need to start our life praising God and thanking Him for all that He's done, because He really has blessed you with what you have today. And thank Him for His honor standing with you. I mean, when I pass away one day, we're all going to pass away, at my eulogy, I'd love somebody to say that Melisa was a woman of God's own heart. She was a faithful and good servant. What would you like at your eulogy, that somebody to mention that you were a man or a woman of God's own heart? And we're going to go into communion now. And while the bread is being served, I'd ask you just to take the opportunity to speak to God and say to the Lord, I've chosen this number because of this, or I want to write a letter to you, or I want to send a text to you. I don't know, whatever way works for you. But start having a conversation with God and saying to the Lord, I love you and I praise you, but I want to get to know you better. The Alpha course is happening in February, and even though some of us do have a relationship with God, the Alpha course is wonderful to go to, but start your conversation with God now. Don't let it go by, because you're missing out. Because God wants to have a relationship with you. God is a relational God. So I'm going to go down to the communion table, and I'm going to ask Jason just to